I'm planning to paint some tulips today, and I was thinking about what colors would I choose. I wanted to have some opposing complementary colors from the color wheel. So when I look at complements, I could choose yellow with some contrasting violet, violet in the vase or the leaves. I could choose a form of red with contrasting green, or blue with orange. In the end, I decided to choose a variation of red, which is a pink, and a variation of green, which is like a teal. And so that toned down red and that teal is more like a split complement. This is called a split complement here. When they go one to the side of the complement, it's called a split complement. So I thought I would focus my colors on variations of pink and teal. And so you can see that when you mix together the little dust teal and some of the pinks, you get some very nice neutrals. And then I thought I would bring in some quinacridone, no, some cobalt violet, which is a sort of when done very light, it's almost a pink. So it's in that same family of slightly bluish, reddish tone. And I would bring in some rose and some lavender, which is a little variation on the cobalt violet. So those are the colors I thought I would use in this particular painting. And I thought I would start by putting in some water around my flowers. I've already wet the paper on the back and on the front and let it dry so that it's somewhat stretched. There always is some buckling, but at least it'll be a little bit minimized by doing that. And I'm just going to take some of that. So I put it around there. I'm also going to put some all over the blank space. I'm going to use a little bigger brush than this flat here. I'll take a regular mop and take some of the lavender. This is the lavender. It's a Daniel Smith lavender, it's called. And it's a very bluish violet. And when you mix that with the this pink here, you get a very nice, which is almost like a cobalt violet too. You get a sort of a gray. So I'm going to take these two colors and I'm going to use them very lightly with a lot of water in as a background. Very soft. I'm hoping that will work well for this painting. Bringing in some of that pink in there with the lavender and bringing some of that lavender down, varying it, making it a little darker down as it goes down the paper here. And I'm not worrying too much about edges. I want a little bit of space around the flowers. Put a little more of let them mix together. And the nice thing is these two colors, when mixed, do granulate. So it's so if we move the paper back and forth, it will settle into the crevices of the, this is 140-pound knot. It's not, which means it's not rough and it's not smooth. So sometimes it's called fine, but it's 140-pound knot. And there. So we'll let that sit and granulate. Okay, so This is drying now, and I'm just, it was a very, very thin light wash, and I'm just putting a little bit of scumbling texture with the two colors, the Wisteria, a little bit here and there. I'm going to keep that background very, very light, but just put a little bit of texture here and there with the lavender and the Wisteria. Yeah, I'm liking the way they look together. I practiced, as I said, with some paper to see how they might work. I wanted to have some complements so I could get some very contrasting color, and I think you can see in the focal area where I have some of this contrasting color, it's going to be potentially very pretty. So I'm looking forward to using these complements in order to, they're kind of unusual complements, using the teal and together with the Wisteria and some rose as the blue and the blue green and the red complements. So they're a little unusual, but I think I'm just putting in a little bit of background, finishing some background here and there. Again, just using some side motion with the brush. And here's the Wisteria. A little bit of the lavender down here between those leaves. Sometimes I put the background in afterward. Sometimes I put it in early. It always is a little variable. But in this particular case, since these are very light colors, I know I can go over them if I want. And yeah, so there you see those two. And I'll come back with the mixes of the, I'm going to mix some Wisteria with rose for the initial coat on the flowers. I'll just show you. If I take a saucer, I'll take some of the rose. This is rose here from my palette. You can see the rose here from the palette. It's a very reddish rose. It's a little less brown than rose madder. Rose madder is a little more brownish. This is a very nice rose. So take that. And this Wisteria here, which is a fairly new color in Daniel Smith. It's a semi-opaque, and it's very nice kind of pink. There. I'm going to take that. Get as much of it on there as I can. Okay. And for the initial layers in the flowers, I'm going to use that mixture, but very thin. Okay, very thin. And on the sun side, which will be on this side here, it's a little lighter, and on this a little darker on the shade side. Okay, so I'll put in some initial mixture, and then I'll glaze over with some shading a little later. Let's see, I might on a few places leave some highlights. There, I'll carry some color into the edge, but lighter with water. You can see that. And take that, some water, and carry that in. so it's lighter there on the sun side. The petals are like that, and then a little darker on the shadow side. I'll be bringing in some shadow colors. I think I'll glaze them on rather than dropping them in loose right now. So later on, after this first coat is dry, I'll put some water on and drop in some shadow color. Okay, so this is the way, let's see, here's like the same thing. Here's watered down color here, and a little darker over here, and water transition in between. And then he puts just a little bit of color, leaving a little bit of white. In back, very watered down, just an impression of color. Not a lot of formation to those ones in the back. You can hear my neighbor's dog. Lift a little color there, it's too much. Just put a little tiny bit up here, leaving a little bit of white. Okay, so just moving around to some light on this one here with some water. I'm going to put this plate down because that's easier for me to paint without holding it. And a little darker on the shadow side. And it helps to have a good sketch, so I can have a good sketch, and I've indicated where the shadows are, so it's just a matter of painting them in. Very lightly on this one in the back. And I try not to let too much water get close to a painting that's already, a painted tulip that's already wet, because then we might get some backflow and that'll create a bloom. And so I won't do this one in between, because being next to the two wet ones in between, I'm likely to get backflow, and that creates a problem when the color backflows into the other. And again, I'm going to do the shadow side a little darker. And then just fill in with some color. Leave a little bit of white here and there as highlights between petals, or at the tips of petals where the sun might be a little bit brighter. And then a little space sometime where I'll put some shadow in between some petals as well. So it's plenty of time to decide that a little bit later, after this initial set of light washes is done. Because I don't always paint by the process of glazing, but for the most part I like to paint by glazing, where you put a layer and then you come in and you glaze with another layer, and you can see through the glazes when they're watery enough, because I am using mostly transparent. If I use, like the Wisteria's semi-transparent, so it's not fully transparent, but the rose was completely transparent. So that's a good start. Best thing is to let this completely dry, let the paper flatten out, and then I'm going to decide what color to be the vase. But I'm thinking that using the teal directly for the vase will work well. So let me just take that color, because the leaves will be a combination of a green with the teal and also a green with more violet. So because the complementary colors in this painting are teal as opposed to pink. And there is, I'm going to be using a little bit of violet for shadows mixed in with the teal. And but again, that violet, it'll be a reddish violet that's in the similar family with this pink Wisteria. So that's a start for the vase. The vase will be very bright. Oh, I think that you can't see that. Let me make sure that I move this so that you can see that, okay? So that's the vase. And like I said, when I mix the rose with the, I'm going to bring in rose in the shadow here. Right now that is a mixture of some rose and wisteria. I'll bring in a bit more rose in the shadows, so it'll be a little darker, and some cobalt violet, so it'll have more of a shadow look. And I'll bring some of that cobalt violet and deeper rose mixture in with the teal, and shade the vase with those colors. But I'll wait until everything dries and the paper flattens out a bit after drying. So we're off to a good start, I think. I hope you like it. Let me just put it there so you can see it. Yeah, hope you like it. I'll be back soon. Okay, so this is the rose mixed in with the wisteria. I think I'll bring in a little bit more rose so it's just a bit darker. Okay. And I'm adding a little bit of cobalt violet, which is this color here. That's just similar to the wisteria, but just a bit darker. Again, just to get that color a little more rich. That's going to be some of my shadow color for the tulips. And I'll put a touch of quinacridone violet in there. There. That'll be a good shadow color, I think. And then I want to take some of that over here in this little plate. And remember, I used the teal. I'm going to take some of that teal, mix that with the same color to get a neutral. Okay. And then that becomes the shadow color on this vase. Because I like the idea of, first of all, we've got complements with the bluish green opposed to the pink. And I like the idea of trying to use the complements mixed together to get our shadow colors as neutrals. Let me move that so you can see it just a little bit better. And I'll zoom in on that a little bit. You can see how those two colors mix together. And I'm going to bring in a little more of the teal, make it a little more intense, and they'll blend nicely together and granulate quite a lot, creating a wonderful texture on that vase. It's just a tiny vase, but that color will make the whole painting pop. So I'll put those two colors over here, and we'll start the shadows on these tulips. Oops, yeah. Sorry about that. I'll go out now and move the camera just a little bit so you can see that a little better. So I'll put that. I remember I put a little more pink in there to make it a little more intense. And I put a little bit of cobalt violet in there. And just a pinch of quinacridone violet so that I would get enough darkness to begin to show some shape on some of these petals. And then I'll just use a little bit of water to pull those colors in to the dried. And the other rest dries very quickly. And I'll take my time with this. I'm not in a hurry to get them all done in one swoop, but want to carefully shape them and not overpaint them, because I want them to look like the thin, soft petals that they are, not too papery or too heavy-handed. Yeah, just a little bit of water to spread them out. So you can see how they're emerging. Let's see. A little spot over here. I'll do one more and then I'll turn it down because the camera's kind of in the way of me reaching the petals. But you can see how I'm doing it, so that's fine. Because I'd like to turn the board around so that I can reach it from the other side and do the petals out there. So these ones in back, I'll just do a little bit here and there because I'm going to leave them very soft. One more here. A little more on this one. It is important to try to let them dry in between and not overwork them while they're still wet. so I don't get any backflow. Okay. These two I can't reach very well, so I'll go this way. Because I don't want to put the palm of my hand there on that. So, so I'm just putting that darker mixture on a glazed overlay on the shadow side of the tulip, so that it's leaving the other side light for now. I can always come back and make some areas dark, but this diffused into the background, so the background wasn't dry enough. I'll have to dampen that. And I can do a little bit on this petal here. Sometimes when you see like this light area here with some highlighting, this is a good place to do a little bit of dark, what we call negative painting, behind that light area that's catching some light. Try to spread it out with some damp brush. And the same over here. Just a little bit of dark behind this tulip as negative painting. Even though that back painting, that back tulip is on the sun side, it's all right. It's got a little bit of shadow from the leaf that is there in front of it here. This leaf will be green or teal and green mixture. Okay. All these shadows inside the petals, between petals, will be painted toward the end. But I want to show you, look how lovely this is drying, the vase. Isn't that pretty? With the, you can see the granulation of the mixture. Let me just, yeah. You know, the vase is really looking good. I think it just makes everything pop. The combination of colors is working well, so it's good. Okay, I'll come back to this after everything is dry. And we'll talk about the leaves, which are going to be a combination of teal with some green, some emerald green or viridian green, and some violet mixed in for shadows. So there'll be violet in everything here in this painting. Some of the rose will be in all, not only in the flowers, but also in the leaves, as the complementary color to the green, because it's a red. So red and green, as I said, on the color chart are complements. And when you mix complements, two opposing colors, you get a neutral. So sometimes it's a sort of brownish neutral, sometimes it's a more grayish neutral. Now you can also mix what's called split complements when you go one to the side of the complement. So I'm doing the split complements with a blue-green, okay? And in this direction, I'm also doing a split complement of green with red-violet. So I'm getting 2 sets of neutrals, but mixing basically reds and greens, variations of reds and greens, as complements and split complements, in order to get the shadow colors that we're going to use in this painting. If you want to see about the color mixing, there's a separate video on color mixing of neutrals. That was done a couple of weeks ago, so you can check it out on the same YouTube channel of my studio work. Thank you for joining me, and we'll come back to this when everything is really dry and all the bumpiness on the paper settles down. I did wet the back and I wet the front and taped it down and let it dry, and it was you know, pretty flat. And every time that I work it, it will get bumpy again. And so it's best if you just let it dry again, and it becomes totally flat. And then you can see the colors better too, because as they dry, they'll all be lighter. And it gives you a better idea of the next phase. So I tend to work on several paintings at a time on different boards. And altogether I'm probably working on 8 paintings between my research for the paintings, decisions about colors, sketching of the paintings. So I've got boards with about 8 paintings right now. So in between, while they're drying, I have other ones that I'm working on. So people say, how long did it take you to do a painting? I never know, because sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes even months before a painting is finished, and you keep tweaking it until you just get it right. And sometimes scrubbing things out. I just finished a painting that I scrubbed out the whole sky. I liked the way the landscape looked, but I wasn't happy with the sky, so I just scrubbed it out and got back down to scrubbing out using a magic eraser with no suds in it. Cut them up, put them in the water, and just wet it and take the color out. Fortunately, this Canson 140-pound paper, and also the Arches, this is Arches 140-pound paper, very forgiving about lifting and removing color, as long as you don't use staining colors. So I stay away from the phthalos, phthalo blues, phthalo green, some of the other indigo, sepia. Some of those colors really stain quite a bit, so I stay away from the ones that are staining. It lets me, gives me the opportunity to lift things out. Okay, see you later. Okay, things are pretty dry now, and it's flattened out pretty nicely. I've got, the idea was red and green, various reds with some reddish violets, and various greens with some bluish violets as all part of the mixture. So I've got some very beautiful viridian here. I'll try to move this over a little bit here so you can see a little better. There. Should be a little bit. It's hard to get the whole thing in. Yeah, I think that's. I want some of the leaves to have this bright viridian on the light side that will transition. It's kind of almost an emerald type of color. And some to have the bluish green, cobalt teal. So here you can see some of that here. And I'll make the shadows mixing the colors of the deep reds and the blues. But the initial work will be to have the different leaves have slightly different colors. They're all in the same family. So here's another one here. I'm basically putting the colors on the, that was some Viridian, here's some of the cobalt teal, watered down. I might not do them all at one time because I don't want them to bleed together. I'm leaving a little space there so that the colors don't run. Let's see here, maybe this one, a little bit of the cobalt teal. Comes up to a tip here. I love the tulip leaves. They're so sculptural and interesting. They're very firm. They keep their shape when you put them in a vase. They have wonderful, wonderful shape to them. Kind of thick. They don't bend that easily, but they curl a little bit. I'm mixing the two colors together. I had just put the Viridian in, and putting in some of the cobalt teal there, letting them run together a little bit in that one leaf, sort of a central key leaf. Just want to make sure that get a brush to clean that off. I don't want that to be getting into the tulip. Put a little Viridian up here on the top. It's a beautiful green. It's like looking at an emerald, cut emerald stone. Put some here. I'll do the stems last. The stems often have a fair amount of white in them, and they're somewhat translucent. So let's put a little color here. Mix some of the green in there. The just slightly varying the colors from leaf to leaf by mixing the two or adding more water or less water. I think I really can't do very much more without them running into each other. I'm going to take a little bit of water on this one, and what I want to do is, what I had shown you before, is to take some of the cobalt and mix it with the cobalt teal, and mix it with the pink mixture that has a little bit of cobalt violet, a little bit of, started with wisteria and pink, a little cobalt violet. So I'm going to take some of that and bring more of this cobalt teal into that. And you see how I get I want a little bit of green in there too. Trying to get a shadow color that would blend well for these leaves. Let's see how that works. That's a nice shadow color. Fairly harmonious with the leaf. That's a good start. Over here I'll put some. And again, by doing this lightly at this point, I can come back and adjust and put in some more color of a different type to enhance the shadows. Let me make that a little bit more shadowy. To put over here with this leaf. It's a very gray tone. I'll add a little more green in there right from, let them mix together on the paper. And blend. I'm hoping that this way of mixing the colors is going to create a pretty harmonious arrangement. Take a little more of the violet mixture and just put it in here in the center of this leaf. I think that'll work. Put some of this green mixed with the violet here. And because this leaf is behind the tulip, so it's got a lot of shadow. And then just blend it up. That's gonna work. Try some more. A little more green in this one. Again, where the leaf curves, and just in the center of the curve, there's a little bit of shadow. Okay, so I have to let some of these, I'll put some over here, a little darker teal, bring it down, and clean up this petal that has gotten some backwash there on it. I don't want that. So I'm going to lift that color out with a damp brush. And take some paper towel and dab it. There. It's a little better. So take this up here, put this a little bit in shadow where it's turned away from the sun. And up here into the curve, and then blend it. I'll have to leave that wet area down there so it doesn't backwash into the petal of the tulip till it dries a little bit more. I'd like the tip to be more green, so I'll do that so that it really stands out as a leaf. Make that edge sharp. Yeah, the edges of these leaves often are very pointed. It's one of the characteristics of the tulip leaves. So it's like they're dancing. They have such wonderful curvature, like they're moving, and they're very sculptural. So I'll take some more of that mixture that I made with the cobalt teal and some of the rose and violet until I got a bit of a gray, a neutral, which is what you get from the complementary colors. Like I said, these are all in the family of red and green as complementary colors. Okay, the rest I'm going to leave until and work on off camera. In terms of the leaves, it'll be the same process, but I have to leave a little bit of time for these to dry, to do the ones in between so that they don't run together. Okay. Starting to emerge, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. I think the leaves are close to being done. I like the way they look. They're very soft. So and I also like the way the petals are moving. So I had put a tiny bit of Prussian blue, Prussian green into the mix here, this mix here of shadow color, just to darken it a little bit with the violet when I went back and did a little more work to finish up those leaves. And so now I'm working with the same mixture that we had before of the quinacridone violet with rose and wisteria, and I've just put a little more of the violet into the mix so that I can have a little more definition on some of the leaves, just taking it a shade darker in some places that are in shadow. And then I'll use some damp brush and water to spread that. But I'm going to leave a lot of the leaves very soft, a lot of the petals very soft, putting a little bit of accent here and there. A little bit of definition here and there. But I have to be careful not to overdo it, because it's in the softness of the tulips is really in harmony with this soft color of the leaves and the very, very soft color of the background. So I'd like to leave it that way. Every painting has its own feeling. There's no right or wrong. So I'm just putting a little definition on some of these petals. And often what happens with the stems is that a little bit of the color does get carried down in the stems. I don't know whether you'd call it a reflection or what, but one sees that there's color that comes down from the flower. I think it's reflected color, because they're very shiny stems, and so they probably do mirror some of the color of the petals above. So this is just taking this a shade darker by mixing in a little more of the violet with the rose and the wisteria. I don't have to do them all. I have to be careful not to do them all. That would be a mistake. But do some. Maybe I'll leave that one to the side alone. Put a little bit of color in the inside of the flower here. Maybe a little bit inside. I'm just going to put some color at the base here. Of that flower that's behind. That begins to make this little combination of white and lighter colors with that very dark bit right there. Hopefully that begins to make that a bit of a focal point. I'll make sure that that color is carried down so that the eye goes right to that area right there. And I'll put a little bit of definition by negative painting around those white areas. Again, to increase the value contrast between light and dark in a focal area. So since that was emerging, that's potentially a good place to do that. That is now the central focal area of the painting. After that dries, I may come in with just a touch more dark color, but for now it's the color contrast right there, that the value contrast between the very light and the very dark in that one place that brings the eye there. So I'm just enhancing that. As this is the focal area. And I'm going to leave a fair amount of this light. Some green has creeped in there, and I have to lift that color. Okay. I'll put a little bit of the same dark in here as shadow color. But I won't make it quite as dark because I don't want it to take away from the main area that is the focus. But just enough to define that flower. And bring some of that color up there. And over here I'll bring in a little bit. I don't want it. I'll take the lighter side of that, water that down a little bit. But I need a little bit of definition of these petals here. Because I've got quite a few pencil marks there that indicate the edge of the flower, and so I don't want those to be uncovered. I think I'll put a little bit of the shadow color. That's the mixture of the teal and to indicate a shadow from the leaf in front of it. And this one also has a little bit of the teal in with the violet, just to indicate a bit of a shadow from the leaf. A little bit of shadow and reflection there. I think that's probably enough. I don't want to overdo it. And a little tiny bit of very soft, subtle color in here. There, just to indicate that there's a flower there. And some soft color here. Indicate flowers there. I'm going to look at this for a while and see whether I want to put some darks. I had originally planned to put some darks between the petals there, but I don't know. Not convinced. But let me see. Because it's not a petal color, it's a neutral color. And my plan had been to take the teal and then, yeah, I think I'm going to give it a try. Let's see. So I may use a bit of a gray there, because it's an interesting separation of the petals there. Where they come together. So I think I'm going to show that little shadow there. I'm taking a risk because it's creating a bit of a value contrast here that takes away from the one above. And also it's creating some interesting detail for the eye. But I'm not sure I want to lose that because I had planned to put it in. So what I'll do is I'll take some of that dark lavender and put that in here, also to carry the eye up. This is the lavender with a little bit of the teal in it, and increase this color contrast and value contrast in here. Just a bit. I gotta make sure I don't overdo it because it's really looking very soft and I don't want anything that's going to take away from that. I've got a little bit more over here with this flower above. I had some more over here, but I'll do it lightly So it's not, and it's in a gray. It's one of the neutrals that we made from the teal mixed with the violet. So we'll blend that in. Hopefully it's not contrasting too much. It's in the same family of colors, but just a little bit different. I'll drop some lavender in here, bring more color in there. Because it's a little too gray. Drop a little bit of lavender in there. Carry that line back. Okay. I'm beginning to feel like this is really very close to being done. Put a little bit of that color there. Again, a little more of that lavender. I'm not going to put the definition flowers over there because I don't want them to take away from this area here. So I think this painting is pretty close to being done, maybe done. There's a little mark here that makes it look like the stem is not continuous, so let me clean that up. And there's just some color from the other. I'll get my little tiny scrub brush, which has got very stiff bristles, made just for scrubbing, and scrub that out. Put a little water on it. Try to get that color out. Yeah, that's good. I think this one is okay. All right. I'm going to call this painting finished. I hope you enjoyed seeing how a wide range of reds mixed with a wide range of greens, including bluish greens, and in the reds, including reddish violets, how that range of reds was used to make the shadow colors and the grays that are in here. So working with those complements of red and green, this whole painting has been done on that basis, hopefully with the effect of creating harmony among the entire composition. Okay, thanks for joining me.